first presenter, Professor Dani Horesh, who will talk about using mindfulness to promote resilience in the face of adversity. Professor Horesh is a licensed clinical psychologist and an associate professor of clinical psychology at Bar-Ilan University in Israel. He is the head of the Trauma and Stress Research Lab, where he and his team study post-traumatic stress and psychopathology in various contexts. In addition, Professor Horesh conducts studies on the efficacy of mindfulness-based interventions among populations exposed to chronic stress. Professor Horesh, please.
Okay. Thank you, Rivka, and thank you, the organizers and ESTSS, for giving me this unique opportunity to hopefully contribute to mental health professionals in the Ukraine in these very challenging times. So we have a short amount of time to present I think the potential of this very powerful tool called mindfulness in the face of adversity. And I will do my best to give the very basics of what I think therapists can do with their clients in times of war and exposure to chronic stress. So we have known for a long time now that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. So since this landmark paper was published, numerous studies and also clinical work has shown us that there is a lot of benefit. There's a very big benefit in being in the moment. It's not an easy thing to do, focusing our attention in the present moment, trying to feel what we feel or think what we think. And the opposite can be said. We usually tend to wander off with our thoughts and emotions. Typically when we do so, we tend to feel stressed, we can feel anxious, we can feel negative mood. And then this raises the question of what can we do to help ourselves and our clients and patients to try and stay in the present moment, to regulate emotions, to kind of stop and look at what they're feeling and experiencing and thinking. And I think that today, more than any other time, we have quite good clinical tools of doing so. I think that these tools are very, very relevant to times of war and conflict. And as a matter of fact, to every ongoing crisis that humanity may encounter. So what is mindfulness? I think that the best definition, which is the classical definition, was given by Kabat-Zinn, the man who imported mindfulness into the West. So mindfulness involves paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Again, focusing our attention on what is happening now, it's quite a difficult task, especially for the Western individual. And you know, this notion was obviously derived from Buddhist philosophy, but it was incorporated into modern psychology and modern clinical psychology to be a mind-body psychotherapy. It's part of the third wave of CBT. The main idea is to foster awareness and attention to experience at any moment with open and non-reactive attention. So these are big words, obviously, but how do we do that? There are various variants of mindfulness-based interventions. The most well-known, I think, is MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was developed by Kabat-Zinn in the late 70s. And research has really been accumulating with very good supporting evidence for the efficacy of mindfulness-based interventions for depression, for PTSD, for OCD, ADHD, and many other pathologies, both from the mental health spectrum and the physical health spectrum. So let's start with the very basic, and I think it's very relevant, unfortunately these days, at times of war in the Ukraine. What usually happens when we encounter a negative thought or feeling? So for most of us, we usually turn into what we call autopilot. So we have a negative feeling or a negative emotion, and then something happens and the wheels keep turning faster and faster, and we just wander off into these often catastrophic or anxious or depressed scripts of what's happening to us, what is going to happen, worry, etc., etc. We usually try to push these thoughts away because they don't feel good, right? We try to do something with them. We usually tend to be very reactive about them. We also tend to over-identify with them. So if I'm feeling anxious right now, or if I'm feeling I have a bad mood, I am my thoughts. It's not that I have a depressed thought, or a negative thought, but that I am depressed. It's all encompassing, can become very, very broad. And then I can also tend to blame myself and feel guilty. Why am I thinking this way? Why is this happening to me? It's never going to go away. Something is wrong with me. So if we look at these elements, we can think about what mindfulness maybe can offer us to alleviate our psychological pain. I'm sure all of you know CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and most of you know the second wave of CBT, the more classical wave that was established by Beck. And let's say we have a child or parent, coming in the clinic saying, I'm so worried about the war, I feel helpless about the situation, I'm sure it will only get worse, nothing will ever be the same. So if you think along the second wave of CBT, we'll try to alter these cognitions, to add perspective, proportion, to restructure or reframe what they're thinking or feeling. But when we look at the third wave of CBT, and mindfulness especially, our approach will be totally different, trying to think about how to befriend these thoughts or feeling, open space to actually sit with them for a while, observe them, not try to avoid them, or actually not try to do anything with them, not try to fight them, but do something else, something that has a different tempo and a different rhythm. When we look at mindfulness-based stress reduction, so usually it's a group therapy, but again, it could be applied individually, and I'm going to talk about the general application. It's obviously evidence-based. The generic protocol has 8 weekly sessions, but again, this could change very flexibly, both in terms of how many sessions and the hours for each session. And what's interesting is that the mindfulness-based interventions have specific therapeutic elements. So for example, body scanning, doing these guided scanning of the body, going bit by bit or organ, from the head to the knees, to the toes and back, focusing on breathing, not for the sake of relaxation per se, but actually for the sake of being in the moment, tapping into the present moment. We have open attention exercises, like trying to listen to what's going on without interruption. And you will hear and feel and smell all the things that you haven't sensed before. There's something very important, especially I think during these times of conflict, in mindfulness in daily life. So, we can do mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful communication, the application in real life, outside the clinical setting, which is very, very important, especially for kids and families. And again, fostering something which is a flexible approach and a non-reactive approach towards negative feelings and sensations. So there are various exercises we can do, and obviously I don't have the time to teach all of those, but I will tell you where to find those. And resources are really abundant, as I will say in a few minutes. Research on MBSR effectiveness is very, very common these days, and it's effective for depression, for PTSD, which is right now, unfortunately, very relevant for general stress, for chronic pain, and there are also very good ways of measuring mindfulness if you want in the clinic or for research sake using the MAS or the FFMQ. So really the field has developed, and we also know about the neurobiological and the physiological effects that often accompany the interventions. So we have a solid ground to stand upon and work with. And you know, these days in the Ukraine, we are dealing with a lot of trauma. And it was kind of a natural, I think, connection between mindfulness and trauma that has been done in the last 2 decades. And we know today that mindfulness-based interventions can do a lot of good to post-traumatic populations because they make space for intrusive thoughts and memories as opposed to avoid them. They reduce impulsivity and reactivity, so I can maybe observe my thoughts, my negative thoughts and my memories, and then see what I'll do with them, but I don't have to react immediately. The non-judgmental element is very strong. You know, the shame and the guilt that accompany trauma can be alleviated when you foster the right atmosphere. And of course, the body and trauma are very well connected, hyperarousal and autonomic nervous system dysregulation. So these mind-body exercises that I mentioned before are very, very useful when you look at the post-traumatic body. And a lot of people, obviously in and outside the Ukraine right now, are feeling in various ways hyper-aroused or vigilant. And our way of using mindfulness to looking at the present moment and understanding our body and its reactions are very important.
Danny, can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Aliona needs to say something because there is an issue with the other channel. So just a second. Sure. Yes, Aliona, please.
I'm sorry for taking your time. And just a few words in Ukrainian. Дорогі колеги, я хотіла би вас попросити для всіх, хто не зміг знайти український канал, перейдіть, будь ласка, внизу, якщо ви на ноутбуці, на іконку глобус, і там пише переклад або interpretation, або через мобільний телефон натисніть на 3 крапочки в правому нижньому куточку, і там теж ви побачите подібну іконку з перекладом, на яку треба натиснути, і там буде український канал або англійський, якщо ви преферуєте англійський. Прошу вибачення за цей конфуз. Просто доктор Дані Гареш був такий ласкавий до нас, щоб зразу почати. Він хоче так багато розповісти нам, тому так сталося. Дякую вам. Якщо є проблеми, пишіть мені, будь ласка.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So using mindfulness as a tool to being in the present moment in the context of trauma can be very, very useful. Of course, we have to do it. It should be well informed. It should be done with empathy and sensitivity, but it's a very powerful tool. And we're here to talk about the family system and how we can use mindfulness within it. So a few basic assumptions, which I'm sure most of you already know. So families, like individuals, can become reactive and dysregulated, especially in the context of trauma. And we also know that parents often serve as auxiliary egos or as regulators of children's emotions. They play a very central role, and therefore they themselves need to be better regulated. And we also know that this goes for the entire family system, not only the parent-child dyad, but also, for example, among couples. So one can regulate the other or assist in regulating or dysregulating the other. But this whole sense of emotion regulation is very important, very central to mindfulness practice. And when we look at the family system, what I would like to do is first talk about the children, which I think are always the most vulnerable, and especially in these times of war in the Ukraine. Let's talk a little bit about what we can do to help children dealing with chronic stress and trauma. So mindfulness with children can work very well, and it can be done very creatively in various ways. I think that first of all, when we're trying to explain mindfulness to the adult or the child, we should try and first make sure that we are on the same page and that they understand what we are doing. Why are we breathing? Why are we scanning the body? Why are we, what's the use of being in the present moment? What's the rationale? And with children, there are various beautiful ways of explaining this rationale using metaphors, videos, games. And I would like to give you one small example. It's a nice metaphor, I think. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Be the Pond. Can you hear it?
Yes.
Sorry.
Hello. Welcome to the Cosmic Kids Zen Den, your place to help you learn how your mind works and what you can do to keep yourself feeling happy and healthy. This is Jack. Jack is going to help us today by doing the Zen Den with us. First, let's get comfy. Sitting here, cross-legged on the floor, long tall backs and shoulders relaxed. Or if you prefer, sit on a chair. If you are sitting on a chair, sit tall, both feet on the floor, back nice and long, and shoulders relaxed. Get your position sorted. And when you're ready, take some nice deep breaths. In through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Good. After a few breaths, you should start to feel nice and calm and relaxed. Now, I'd like you to imagine that you and your mind is a big, lovely pond. In that pond are lots of different kinds of fish. These are your feelings, all swimming around together. There's a happy fish, a sad fish, a sleepy fish, an excited fish, an angry fish, a worried fish, a playful fish, a calm fish, a kind fish, a selfish fish. So many fish, so many feelings, all swimming around the pond. Your job here is just to be the pond. Be the pond. It's wonderful being the pond because you can just watch all your different feelings just swimming by. All of them are okay. Every feeling is welcome. You be the pond and let the fish be the fish.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it a little bit short because I see we don't have a lot of time, but this is just one of a lot of metaphors you can find. You can choose the one you're most connected to. You don't have to choose this one. But the main idea of teaching children what mindfulness is very important. What's also important is working with parent-child exercises. So the parent as a mindfulness agent, encourage these exercises together. Content is not necessarily important. It's not like children have to talk about trauma necessarily or about the war. So do parents. What's important is the mental process. It's kind of like a mental muscle that we need to train. And then every kind of content can enter it and be more adaptive. And in general, with children, try to be very creative. You can create metaphors of your own, exercises of your own. And I'll also say a little bit about resources in the end, and emphasize mindfulness in daily life. So it doesn't have to be content specific. And mindful parenting is also very important in these days and in the context of the family. Mindful parenting refers to ways of actually working with parents on not being reactive parents. Again, parents that can actually stop for a second, feel their own emotions, their own cognitions, look at their children, instead of reacting immediately to their anger or frustration or anxiety, which today I think are very common in the Ukraine. Try to act from a more informed place, to think for a second. It can be very short, but think for a second before reacting. It doesn't mean you should think positively. It just means that you should stop and think, again, for your own regulation and then for your children's. And I think these days, and in the context of post-trauma, pay special attention to parental guilt. It's very difficult being a parent in the context of war. Some parents feel they did not keep their children safe. Some blame themselves for something very irrational, and mindfulness tools can be very, very powerful in helping parents alleviate these emotions. In whatever you do using mindfulness, encourage practicing, and as much as you can. We know from research and clinical work that it's very important to practice mindfulness. Again, it's a muscle. It should be flexible. It should be warm. The more you do it, the more you practice mindfulness meditation, the better the results and the easier it becomes to be in the present moment. I want to say a few words about a close relative of mindfulness, which is self-compassion. Maybe some of you know this term. So self-compassion is a very beautiful term coined by Christine Neff. It incorporates mindfulness, but also other elements such as self-kindness and common humanity and lack of over-identification. And I think in these days of war and trauma in general, it's very important to work with clients on, again, not blaming themselves, but also these very specific elements. You know, these days in the Ukraine, I am not the only one who feels this way. Okay, that there are a lot of people the same as me. I deserve some credit for how I'm coping. You know, not many people feel that way during crisis, but it's something that we as therapists should really strengthen. I shouldn't go through this alone. You know, isolation has very, very negative results and effects in these contexts. And we also know that self-compassion is a very good antidote against compassion fatigue. So parents who feel burnt out, feel that they have been weakened by the war, self-compassion is a very powerful tool that, you know, sometimes just saying a few sentences in the session about it that can help bring some air to the client. There are so many resources, and I just want to send all of you to look for them. Very good examples are the VA mobile app in the United States, Headspace, which is very, very well known. For children, there's a beautiful book, a bestseller called Sitting Still Like a Frog. It's been translated to numerous languages. I don't know about Ukrainian, but you can get ideas and exercises from them. It's very, very good for kids with adapted metaphors and everything. Mindfulnessexercises.com has audio meditations, which you can easily translate on your own, record, and send via WhatsApp to your patients. It's not that hard. All you need is an inspiration and a good idea to take it from. You can also add mindfulness to existing therapies. Those of you who are doing CBT or psychodynamic therapy, the ideas of mindfulness can intertwine very, very well into notions from the psychoanalytic literature or from the more traditional CBT literature, from being in the moment to looking at your thoughts to metacognitions. There's something very flexible about the notions of mindfulness. And just a word of caution, what mindfulness is not. So mindfulness is not keeping everything positive. Okay, these days, we all agree war is bad and negative feelings will arise. Mindfulness is not self-admiration. It's not about your patients feeling that they're great and terrific. That's not the idea. The idea is feeling whatever they are feeling and giving legitimacy to that. It's not a relaxation technique per se, although down the road it can lead to relaxation and reduce stress. But no one has to feel guilty these days for not being relaxed. That's not the point. And it's certainly not thinking about anything. So it doesn't have to be an empty mind. could be a mind that is more open to what it is experiencing. And I think that's the main idea behind it. So I would like to thank you all for listening, and you are more than welcome to contact me if you have questions and if you need more resources, which again are abundant. And I hope you can use this tool flexibly and mindfully during these days.
Thank you so much, Danny. We have a few minutes for questions, and I would like to pass on 2 questions that we already have for you. The first one is, what kind of mindfulness would you recommend in a shelter? Is there something specific?
In a shelter.
In a shelter.
Yeah, so I think that's actually, a shelter, unfortunately, can be a very good opportunity for mindfulness, because I think that people who are in a shelter, especially if right now they are bombarded, for example, there's a lot of sensory information. You hear noises from the outside, or you don't hear noises, and that's very scary. There's a lot going on in the atmosphere. And with mindfulness, I think that what I would maybe do in a shelter, if there is noise, let's say from the outside, very scary noise, shooting, bombs. So these open attention exercises, which basically say, instead of trying to shut myself out from what's happening in the environment, there is no way of doing that. It's very difficult to avoid something that you hear, but it is possible to try and actually listen and not be so reactive. So if you feel scared from what's going on, let's be with the fear for a few minutes. Let's try and describe. Describing is very important. What kind of noises are you hearing? How do they sound to you? Give them words. What we know is that the more we open this container and describe it, down the line, it tends to reduce its power. The more we try to avoid it, it intrudes. We know the dynamics, right? That's the sensory dynamics of trauma. So open attention exercises can be very well. And again, pay attention to the reaction of your patient or the child. If it's too scary, we don't have to do it. But if something does happen gradually, that's a good sign.
Okay. Another question is, what would you recommend to do if a person says, I just can't do mindfulness, I'm so stressed out right now, or he says it doesn't help me?
Yeah, so that's a very common reaction. So first of all, I want to say to everyone, don't be afraid of it. That's the first reaction 80% of people say when they practice mindfulness. The first thing to say is, this is not a test. You don't have to succeed in anything. If you feel it's difficult for you, describe what you're going through. So people say, I can't focus my attention in the present moment. It keeps going away. That's great. Where is it going? Describe it, okay? That is a present moment. You can describe what's going on. You don't have to succeed in it. So that's the first thing. If you do see someone that you feel mindfulness is not a good fit for them because it gets them very anxious, and even after repetitive trials, it doesn't work, leave them be. Okay, we know it may be for various reasons, it may not work for them. You as therapists may be missing something there. So don't insist on it, but please do the first trials to try and soften it up a little bit.
Thank you so much, Danny. Alyona writes that the listeners send thank you in Ukrainian for you. So thank you, Danny.
Thank you all.
And we will move on to our second presentation by Professor Moshe Bensimon. Moshe is going to talk to us about resilience song for children living under continuous war threat. Professor Bensimon is a music therapist and a professor at the Department of Criminology at Bar-Ilan University in Israel. He has been working with clients coping with trauma and PTSD, children with behavioral and emotional difficulties, and with psychiatric patients. His fields of research include music therapy with people coping with trauma and PTSD, and music therapy in prisons. Moshe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, inviting me, and It's very meaningful for me to be here. I'm unable to share screen, so maybe as a host you can, or
Danny, maybe you should stop sharing.
okay, now it is fine.
Moshe, now you can share.
Okay, for a minute.
Great.
Okay. I have to go back to the beginning. Okay. So as a music therapist and a researcher, I'll try to share with you some findings from a qualitative research with music therapists. And in this lecture, I'll try to share this information and also insights from the Israeli experience with music techniques for helping children living under continuous war threat. And in order to do so, a bit background of the situation in Israel is required. So due to the continuous Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Israel and the Gaza Strip have become a stress laboratory for researchers of war-related stress within varied populations, including children on both sides of the conflict. From 2006, the year Hamas took over Gaza, more than 10,000 rocket and mortar shell fire fell in Israel. And the majority of the rocket hits occurred in the Western Negev, the area surrounding the Gaza Strip, threatening the lives of tens of thousands of families and resulting in dozens of civilians killed and hundreds injured. As a defense measure, the Israeli government has installed an early warning radar system called Color Red, in which a recorded female voice announces over loudspeakers situated throughout the area, Color Red, signaling residents to seek over. The alarm provides only 10 to 30 seconds warning, depending on the distance from Gaza, before the missile hits. There are days in which the Color Red alert is heard every 3 hours on average, becoming a trigger for anxiety and stress in itself. And this daily routine also comes at high psychological cost for children on both sides of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as researchers show that a large number of those children have experienced trauma and high rates of PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Now, let's see an example of a song called Color Red, the Color Red song, which was written by Shachar Bar. We will analyze the song later, and at this point, I would like you to get a first impression of the song.
לנשום עמוק, אפשר לצחוק. הכל עבר, וטוב לי שנגמר, יש!
Okay, you have now first impression. You bear in mind few things. We will get later back to this song and analyze it, as I promised. So the findings of this lecture are based on a qualitative study with 15 music therapists working with children living around Gaza Strip under continuous war threat. The study yielded 3 themes that relate to the therapeutic use of resilient song. The first theme is creation of a musical playful space The second is fostering a sense of control. And the third is fostering resilience. In the next minutes, we will elaborate on each theme or component, and then we will get back to the color red song, which we just saw, and see and analyze and see how the therapeutic principles are reflected or embedded in this song. So the first theme is about entering to a playful space, and it involves creating something new. When we wonder, when we play music, we have curiosity. We are going to the unknown, but in a safe space. And this kind of space, playfulness, was shown to have great benefits for the well-being. And it's actually, we can see it as the opposite side of, or the opposite space of fight and flight space. Because when you're under threat, you have no time, and it's not the time. You are not in the mind of playing something because you are in a survival state of mind. And playing is just the opposite. Okay, as a qualitative research, the participants' words can explain in the best way each theme. So let's read their words. The following quotation is of Tali, a music therapist who related to the theme of creation of a musical playful space. She says, I decided to turn the bomb into a game. The bomb, the one from which we panic, will turn into a game. The idea was to move the traumatic experience from a fight or flight space to a more relaxed space of creation and play. So we composed with the children a song that they would sing the moment the color red alarm began. The rhythm was planned to synchronize with the fall of the missile, with a bomb, so that the external bomb would become an integral part of the song. We also added fun body movements and ended the song with the words, I survived it. We practiced the song and the movements during the sessions and used the drum's loud sound to represent the sound of the bomb. What happens was that we received reports from parents about more calm, controlled behavior at home in the event of a color red alarm. The second theme is about gaining sense of control, and it relates to the essence of a traumatic event experience, which is about losing sense of control. And it also relates to the fact that most of the traumatic experiences occur by surprise without proper preparation. So regaining a sense of control through resilience song took place in two ways. The first is by incorporating in the lyrics instructions for action. Let's read what Mina said. The unpredictability of the color red alert causes turmoil. You don't know how and when it will catch you. You can be in the shower, at home alone, or on the road. Therefore, in therapy, it is extremely important to enable the client to regain a sense of control. So I compose a song with the children, a song that describes what they should do in such stressful situation, a song that they can sing by themselves outside the clinic and maintain a sense of control. The second way for regaining or for gaining sense of control is by using the song's musical characteristics, such as repetition of lyrics and melody in the chorus, use of rhyme and rhythm and fixed meter, all of which create an experience that provides a sense of control. Let's read what Moran said. The guiding principle in my work with children is regaining the sense of control that has been lost as a result of a traumatic experience. Songs promote control because they are organized and structured. They include rhymes, rhythm, and fixed meter. Songs also include repetition of lyrics and melody in the chorus. All these features create certainty and ability to anticipate the future, and this leads to an increased sense of control. The third theme is about resilience, but first, let's read the definition for resilience. Bonanno contends that resilience reflects the ability to resist changes and maintain a stable equilibrium. This suggests that people who remain stable before, during, and after exposure to trauma show resilience. In the following slide, we will show an example of the use of songs that represented the client's traumatic experience, but at the same time conveyed messages of strength and agency. This may help to maintain a stable equilibrium under continuous missiles threat. Let's read what Lisa said about fostering resilience through songs. After working with clients on regaining a sense of control, my next step is helping them find songs of resilience. I ask them, choose songs that will give you strength, that will make you feel good. Choose songs from your private playlist that will remind you of the traumatic experience, but will also get you out of it. I then make a CD with each client titled Resilience Songs, and later, if you have sleeping problems, for example, they can play this disc before they go to bed, and it helps them fall asleep. I have used this therapeutic process with quite a few children aged 8 to 12. And now let's go back to the Color Red song and see how these three themes or components are implemented in the song. So the first thing is announcing by words and song that the situation now is dangerous, because there may be in the kindergarten children who are busy in other things, but they don't hear the siren. So announcing everybody by song, by singing together, by the group harmony, we announced that the situation now is threatening, and just after this, instructions what to do, to hurry, because now it's a bit dangerous, and we are going to a secure place. Okay, this echoes Danny's presentation about mindfulness. When I am aware of what my body is going through, I am less threatened. I feel under control. And then empowering words, fostering resilience. This is the theme of fostering resilience by words. I am overcoming, and then under shelter, you are waiting to the boom. The kids are waiting to the boom outside, heard outside. And the song continues. Breathing exercise, being connected to the body, very mindful, and reducing the stress by exercise, by body movements, and then again fostering messages, fostering resilient messages. Okay, we use also the laugh as for reducing the tension, and then we can continue our day. To conclude, the use of songs allow children to relieve the fear of the traumatic experience, but with critical change, while entering a creative space which includes playfulness, control, and resilience messages. This activity, as it appears itself, creates a new experience in itself, an experience that creates a reframing of the trauma, and thus the traumatic memory is perceived as less frightening and threatening. It is suggested that this therapeutic use of songs during a traumatic continuous threat may provide children with an experiential reframing of trauma through songs, and future research, quantitative research, should examine whether it may prevent the development of PTSD among children. I hope that the situation in Israel echoes somehow the situation people are experiencing in Ukraine, and that such resilient songs can be implemented in one way or another. I will be more than happy to assist if needed. I pray that the dark days that Ukraine is going through will end as soon as possible, and that your country, which is so dear to you, will begin the work of recovery and rehabilitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Moshe. We have a few minutes for questions or maybe comments, and I'm going to read a few of the comments that we already have. One person wrote, I'm an art therapist, and now I feel that I can be useful again. I didn't feel it before because I'm not a trauma therapist, but now I feel I can do it. So thank you, Dr. Bensimon. There's another question, maybe to you and to Danny as well. How to find courage to adapt to life with war? If you can share experience how people did it in Israel, because we feel that our war will be long.
I can say that it happens. You don't have to work very hard. This is called habituation in behavioral psychology. When our senses are exposed day after day to stimulation, even the good even if it is a good stimulation or a bad stimulation, you are getting used. I think it's one of the nature. It's in our nature to get used to hard things and also good things. At the beginning, you fall in love with your partner, and after 8 9 months, you get used. At the beginning, she was so pretty that you just couldn't see nothing else, and after 1 year, you can see other things. So my response to this question is that it happens by itself. It is very sad, but people adjust. It's in our nature. If Danny wants to add something.
Yeah, I think it's a very deep and difficult question. It takes me to the place of finding meaning. I think that, we haven't really, and I think Rivka also does a lot of research on this. I think that in order to go through this very long and difficult time, you need to have some kind of story, some kind of inner story that has sense to what's going on. So for example, in our country, in Israel, I think there's kind of like a national narrative, and we have personal narratives of living in this kind of reality. And I think that's probably the only way to survive over so many years. But I think people, and the war in Ukraine is still very young, but I'm sure some Ukrainians, and hopefully more, will have some kind of inner story as to some kind of sense of meaning of what's going on, even if it's a negative meaning. But where is this going? Where does this meet me personally? How does this correspond with my life or my parents' life? I think a narrative is very important. Rivka.
Yeah, I can add to that yes, the justification of why this war needs to happen and why we are afraid, and of course we don't want the war to continue. but we justify the fact that we need to fight for the country. And I think if you Ukrainian people believe that you need to defend the country, so it helps in finding meaning. But I want to add 2 points. One is really related to the song, the beautiful song that Moshe shared and explained. One is that even in the song, the kids knew that there is an end to the attack. So if we can help ourselves know that there's going to be a break between the missiles, a break between the attacks, so it gives us a time to prepare and a time to relax. And that's very crucial in our coping. We are not always under the same threat. There are times where we just continue with our lives as usual and times that we are under the threat. And the second thing that is also within the song is that it's much easier to cope when we have a collective coping. And the kids did not sing for themselves, they were part of a group. And that's really very helpful. If you can be with other people, whether it's family, friends, your community, it really, really helps not to be alone with the coping process.
Yes, it's a cohesiveness, group cohesiveness. I saw a question about can we use this song while under attack? And the answer is yes. This song is used when they hear the siren. It is also practiced out of in a secure situation. But when they hear the siren out, they start to practice this song. And on the way to a secure place, they wait to the bomb to be heard outside. And when they hear the bomb falling outside, they continue the song and then it's finished. So I don't know the situation in Ukraine. Do you have sirens? I guess so. But do you hear the sirens in advance before you hear the bomb or while being attacked? However, resilient song can be used in any way. If you have, as a mature person, if you have a song that you know that brings you strength, that the words, the music, the melody, you love it because it brings you energy, good energy, you can just download it and use it while you are going to a safe place and also in a safe place and practice breathing. And I think combining what Danny techniques that of mindfulness can be also useful as well.
Yes, there is another question, but I think Moshe, you really answered it. The question from Ilan is, what happens if children are using the song and experience a traumatic incident during this use? Does future use of the song still provide some sense of resilience, or would it become a trauma trigger in itself? I think we can say, Ilan, that this song is especially sang when the bombs are falling and when the missiles are falling. It's not just a regular song. It's a song that the kids start to sing when they hear the siren. This is why this is the helpful song for them. It's not something that they just sing after. They sing it immediately when the siren starts. So maybe it answers your question. Moshe, there are many, many comments that thank you and that applause the use of the song. I think we have 1 or 2 minutes for last comments or questions, if anyone wants to ask, or we can conclude.
I can say that this song should be taught not under attack. The children should be taught when they are relaxed the song so they can use it and feel control because they know already by heart the song. They can use it when they are under attack. So I wonder if this song is applicable to the situation in Ukraine, and if the melody is known to the people in Ukraine, and we can just change the words and not call it the color red, call it siren in some way, and think creatively how to apply this song or other songs, or just using resilient songs from my playlist that I like, and enter or moderate the fight and flight state with a more calmer playfulness state.
Thank you. We already sent the YouTube link so people can use it, and maybe someone will translate to Ukrainian and find it useful. Thank you so much, Professor Dani Horesh and Professor Moshe Bensimon, and thank you all for listening.
If I
Bye.
may, I'll just say one thing, that we
Sure.
are very, very thankful from all of Ukrainians for you to doing that. And it's a beautiful collaboration that gives us a lot of knowledge, and we really, really appreciate it. And we also, if we may, we want to ask for one request. If you will remember or if you will, after the webinar, think about any song or any video that we can use more for the resilience and mindfulness during the war, we will really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Of course, I'll be happy to talk and give advice. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye. Have a quiet days.
Yeah. We wish you peace.
Okay, thank you. Keep in touch.
Thank you.